Hi and welcome back to the channel, and it's March 2025, and because it's March I thought I would make a small departure from what I normally do on the channel, which is just, you know, go with the flow, and I'd make a theme video. So this is my first Marchintosh video. Yeah, I thought it'd be a little bit of fun to do that. I am a fan of Macintoshes. I started using them in, I think it was 1991. I was in university at the time doing graphic design, and as you may know, Apple's back in the 1980s were very much welded to the idea of desktop publishing. And indeed, a lot of the early innovation took place on the Mac platform, pretty much exclusively, really. It was only in the 90s that, because of the costs of Macs, they were pretty expensive. Some of the companies such as Adobe, PageMaker, etc., they started to try to move on to the PC platform to give people a choice about cost. I first encountered a Mac in college, as I said, and those were a mixture of original Macintoshes, SEs, etc. But the big boy that we actually used on our degree course was a Quadra. It was a smaller tower. I don't have one of those, and because of the lack of space in here, I probably never will. But I do have a machine which is part of a lineage of machines that runs all the way through to today. I don't know how much longer it's going to carry on. There's basically a situation at the moment in computing where, especially at Apple, the idea of this kind of machine is starting to lose sort of coherence, because you can specify a machine now, for instance, one of the Mac Studios, which is a very, very powerful machine and suited for the kind of work that these machines were aimed for. And I'm talking about the sort of pro and server market. These days, Apple tend to be not really involved in servers as much. That tends to be commodity stuff, you know, from AMD and Intel. Intel, you know, dominated that market for the best part of 20 years with the Xeon architecture. But I guess these days you also have the AMD chips, which are doing very well, as we all know. In fact, the PC that I use these days to edit this channel on is an AMD run PC, and it works very well. So let me get the first of the machines that we're going to look at today. This video is not about these machines specifically, but a certain generation of them. But I thought it'd be interesting if we actually saw the sort of generational changes that led up to the machine that we're going to look at today. And that is the Mac Pro from 2006. I have two of them. A bit of a, well, it's not a long story, it's a short story as how I got those. I didn't intend to have two, so we'll go into that a little bit later. Anyway, let's start off by having a quick look at the first machine that I have in this lineage, and that is the Mac Quadra 950. But before we do that, let's have a quick word from our sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay, where you can make your tech dreams a reality. Right now, PCBWay is holding their 11th anniversary badge design contest. They want you to design a badge that honours PCBWay's 11 years of excellence whilst envisaging a bold and inspiring future. So why don't you take on the challenge? Who knows, you might win some of the top prizes. Whether it's PCB prototyping, PCB assembly, 3D printing, or even CNC machining, PCBWay is the way. Starting with an instant quote for your PCB projects, PCBWay will leap into action, building your PCB, assembling it for you if you wish, and once it's passed their quality tests, it'll be winging its way to you in a flash. PCBWay, PCB prototyping the easy way. So this is the first machine in the lineage that we're going to look at, the Quadra 950. This was released in 1992. It has a Motorola processor in it, a 68040, which is the last of the 68,000 lineage of processors that started out in the 1970s, I think it was. And it was originally aimed at being a mini computer on a chip. That was the way it was marketed. And it went on to become a very successful chip, for instance, in the Amiga and the ST ranges, and also in the Macintosh range as well. By 1990, they were getting a little bit, it's not right to say old in the tooth, but they were finding that they weren't really competing very well with the 486s, 386s from Intel, especially in terms of price, but gradually, more and more in terms of performance as well. This machine was aimed at the server market in the long term, but in the shorter term, it was aimed at the productivity market. I'm talking about desktop publishing. This was an area that the Macintosh dominated at the time. And there was a new application called Photoshop, which you may have heard of, which had just been released. And that was an absolute memory glutton. It required a large amount of memory to show images. At the time, 24-bit graphics was a new thing, relatively new anyway. It had been available in the broadcast market since the 1980s. But in the broadcast market, you're talking about machines which cost £200,000 plus by companies such as Quantel and others, Silicon Graphics as well. In the sort of desktop market, though, 24-bit graphics was relatively new, and it required a lot of memory for the machines of that era. And Apple engineered this machine as an answer to that. This machine can handle 256 megabytes of RAM, which by today's standards obviously sounds like nothing. But back in the early 90s, that was an insane amount of memory. A typical PC that you might have owned at home at the time probably would have had 2 megabytes, 4 megabytes, 8 megabytes of memory, something like that. That's what my machines had anyway. And that was the sort of typical thing that people had at the time. This machine could go up to 256. We had a smaller version of this in college. I think it was the 800 I think it was the 800. And that had 32 megabytes of RAM in it. We used it in college as our Photoshop machine, and it was very much in demand with people on the course who were into the digital side of graphic design. I was one of them. You can imagine I was a computer person. I loved the Amigas, and that's what I was using at home. But during the day in college, I would try and get on this, and I would try to do some Photoshop work. This was a crazily expensive machine. It was $7,200 when it was launched. And in today's money, that's over $16,000. So you certainly paid for that power. But the 68040, plus that RAM, plus a really nice architecture, it's using SCSI for the drives, would have made this a very, very high-end machine for that era. The only thing really comparable would have been an SGI, Silicon Graphics machine, which we have down here. But they were much, much more expensive again. You're talking about $20,000, something like that, for a machine like that. The case on this is the interior chassis is made of sheet steel. It's a very heavy machine. Believe me, today I'm going to be doing a lot of heavy lifting. And the exterior of the case is made out of high quality plastic, to the point that even today, it's actually in good condition, this machine. I was very lucky to buy this a couple of years ago. And it's one of my favorite machines in my collection. I don't use it that much because, I don't really need to do graphics or anything. But if I wanted to do some Mac gaming, for instance, of this era, then this would be the machine to use. And also, of course, if I want to show any of the sort of desktop publishing apps, things like that, which I might do one day, then we can go back and have a look at this. Anyway, so that's the first machine that I would call part of the sort of pro line of machines from Apple. Obviously, they had machines before this, but this is where it really became identifiable as a sort of distinct niche that they were trying to serve. Anyway, that's that. Let's move on to the next one, and that is the PowerMac G4. So this is my PowerMac G4. This was from a range of computers released by Apple from, I think it was 1999 onwards. This particular model is from 2002, and it is actually the sort of swan song of this particular range of computers. It was released in 1999 with much herald by Apple. They marketed it as a machine that was actually forbidden for sale overseas due to it being supercomputer powered. Just marketing nonsense, really. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't a very powerful machine. It would have probably fitted into the same kind of niche as the Quadra 950. We're talking about 10 years later, and one of the main things that you'll notice about this machine is a very different aesthetic from 10 years earlier, and it's actually using a different processor architecture as well. Back all the way from the early 80s, the Macintosh range of computers had used Motorola chips. But towards the middle and end of the 1990s, they realized that those chips weren't cutting it anymore, and they made a transition to the PowerPC chips made by IBM. So a G4 is a PowerPC chip This particular one runs at 1.2 gigahertz. And what else can you say about this machine? Well, it now has 2 gigabytes of RAM maximum. Probably wouldn't have come by with that amount originally. It's still a 32-bit machine as far as I know. But what's quite interesting about this machine is that for the first time as well, from what I understand, you could have a dual CPU. Not dual core, dual CPU. Now, those CPUs, I think, had 2 cores. This was something which was happening in the early 2000s, especially late 1990s and early 2000s, where we moved away from CPUs that had a single core to multiple cores. Obviously, in the Intel market, you had the dual core chips there. So yeah, with one of these kitted out with 2 CPUs, you would have had a quad core machine, which would have been a very powerful machine for the time. And again, it's a pro machine aimed at working in desktop publishing and Photoshop and things like that. This now features the famous plastic, yeah, it's mainly plastic actually on the sides as well. Let me just show it to you. Has a plastic door here which can be opened. It's quite a nice design actually. It has this plastic lever here. Not sure how long this is going to last, but this can be flipped open. And there you have the machine inside. It's got an absolutely gigantic heatsink on the CPU. And as I said, from what I understood, it could be spec to have 2 cores. Not quite sure how that works. Maybe I've got 2 CPUs. I'm not quite sure. Anyway, let's shut that back up. Very attractive designs, I think. This one was called the mirrored bay doors model for the obvious reasons. You can see here it has 2 bays there. I think it's optical drives from what I remember. And yeah, very, very attractive machine, but soon to be replaced by the new range of Power Mac G5s. So let's talk about that. I don't actually have one of those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get one of the 2 machines that come after it and pop it on the desk, and we can talk about it as if it is a G5. I'll also show you some images of the real machine as well. So this is not the Power Mac G5. It's actually the one that comes after it. But I'm showing it to you because it has a very, very similar design language to the machine that preceded it. So just imagine that this is actually a G5. I'll show you some pictures of the real one on screen as I talk about it. So this machine was launched in 2003, so pretty soon after the mirrored bay doors machine that I showed you there. It's still a PowerPC machine, but this time using the G5 processor, so obviously a more capable machine. Now, these machines were actually a lot more affordable. The mirrored bay doors was, I think it was $1,300, which in today's money is about $2,500. And this machine was a little bit more expensive at $1,900, so about $3,500 in today's money in 2025. This has a PowerPC chip running at 2.7 gigahertz, and these machines also supported having dual processors. It's very easy, actually, when you're talking about this, to slip into saying dual cores because that's more normal these days. You don't really get machines these days with multiple processors in them, not that I'm aware of anyway, but who knows, they may still exist. But back in the day, to get more power, it was very common in the high-end machines to have multiple processors. So yeah, the Apple machine definitely delivered that. So that gave you a very powerful machine, and that also gave you the option of having more memory. Now this particular model, the G5, had 64-bit chip in it, which meant it could handle more memory for the first time, although it wasn't really that much in evidence, to be honest. The mirrored bay doors that we just looked at, that could handle a maximum of 2 gigabytes of RAM. Now think about that. So it's 10 years later than the 950 Quadra, which could max out to 256 megabytes. The mirrored bay doors could handle 2 gigabytes of RAM, and now this machine in 2003 could handle 4 gigabytes of RAM. So these were very much suited to working in desktop publishing, Photoshop work, things like that, television. Very, very well built machines, I would say. The G4 is a very nicely built machine. It has a very nice case. The plastic in it is premium stuff, becoming quite brittle these days. You've got to be very careful with these machines that you don't damage them, and easy to scratch as well, being plastic. But then they moved for the first time to this anodized aluminium. What's quite interesting, I think, is that with the G5, they moved to a design aesthetic and materials that we're still actually living with today with the Macintosh range of computers. If you buy a Mac Pro, If you buy a Mac Mini or a Mac Studio, they are anodized aluminium, just like this machine here. So it's interesting to see that it's now over 22 years that Apple have actually been using this aesthetic. Are you listening, Apple? Because back in the day, that would have been kind of horrifying for them. I think they like to be on the cutting edge of design and change their designs every now and again. But maybe they've decided that aluminium is the material that makes the most sense. It's the most durable. And they've definitely obviously put a lot of money into actually working with it and producing beautiful machines like the G5. The G5 had one less optical drive than its successor. It has less, I think it has more fans on the back actually, more outlets I should say, and it has a different provision of connectors. But the G5 was a very powerful machine, and it even had water cooling, or rather I should say liquid cooling. But one of the issues with that is that it used a kind of nasty toxic material that apparently would corrode the cooling system. And it's very common if you actually get a second-hand G5 that it's actually unrepairable because the liquid has leaked and destroyed a lot of the bottom of the case. Luckily, the machines that came after it didn't actually use liquid cooling. They used air cooling. So that's something that we're going to look at next. So the next thing we're going to look at are the two machines that I actually have, and we're going to be talking about mainly today. And that is the 2006 and onwards Mac Pro set of machines. So this is the first of the 2006 lineage of Mac Pros that I bought. It was bought towards the tail end of 2022. And why was I interested in this machine? Well, a friend of the channel, Wilson Stockman, used to wax lyrical about these machines, saying that I think it was the 2012 version of this, was an absolutely amazing machine for its era. Incredibly expandable, powerful, and so on and so forth. And I thought, well, that was interesting because I'm interested in Macintoshes, and I'd already bought the Quadra 950, and I thought it'd be interesting to have another machine from that lineage to go with it. The Mirrored Bay Power Mac G4 actually came later. I bought that a couple of years later. So one of the big differences about this machine compared to the previous machines is that it's now using Intel chips. Apple have moved away from the PowerPC range of processors for the same reason that they dropped the range of Motorola chips back in the 1990s. They just were more performant than the PowerPC chips of this era, probably cheaper as well. This machine uses Xeon chips. It's got a very, very similar design language to the previous machine, the G5. And it is not the same machine. It looks very, very similar to it if we compared the photographs of the two. But what are the changes? Well, from what I'm aware, it has two optical drives instead of a single optical drive on the G5. The connectors on the front, I would assume, would be different. Probably different generations of Firewire. I'll show you those on screen. And then if we turn this around, it's very heavy. We now have only one vent on the back, and we have a different set of connectors here. So you can see that it's actually not the same design. It just uses a very, very similar design language. I bought this from a chap over in East London, Southeast London, near an area called Croydon. Quite a nice street, obviously quite affluent. And he worked in video editing. And what was happening was the company where he worked had a number of these machines that they were basically throwing out. He'd had it for a while, I think, and obviously he didn't need it anymore, and he decided to sell it on. Now, what's interesting about this machine is, I think for this, I'm going to ask you to come in a little bit closer. So yeah, this machine has an interesting set of stickers on here. I have no idea why one of the previous owners put some what looked like toilet door stickers on it. It's quite a strange thing to do, really. Maybe this was a relatively slow machine by the end of its lifetime and it was being mocked. I'm not really sure about that. Apart from these stickers, the side of the case is actually in pretty good condition. It's pretty dirty. The machine in general was actually very dusty. So I guess it was used in a dusty environment or just not clean towards the end of its life. The machines have a very nice mechanism for getting the bay door off. So if I turn it like this and show it to you, there's a latch here. You just open that up by pulling on it like this. And then basically the side of the machine comes off like this. Pretty cool, huh? Well, let's turn this around so you can see this a bit more clearly. Superficially, the machine actually looks like it's in great condition on the inside. It's got its original hard drive bay sleds, which is a really big plus. They tend to disappear. But on the downside, it's absolutely filthy. Probably one of the dustiest machines I've ever seen. I think the only thing that rivaled it would have been my Amiga 2000, but that had a sort of less generous layer of filth in this area. And it actually has dual fans at the front, one which flows through this area to keep the graphics card cool, and another one, which is a big part of the design, which actually flows through the shroud area here to keep the RAM and the CPUs, which are in here, cool. So I think before we do anything else on this machine, I really want to give it a bit of a dusting because it's absolutely filthy and I really don't want to touch it. I'm not squeamish about these things, but I just don't want to get dust all over my hands, and you want to see the machine, don't you? So let's take it outside and we'll give it a quick clean. So I've actually been waiting for the weather to be good to do this. It's been raining the last couple of days. Early spring here in the UK. There we are. You can see that quite well, can't you? Okay, I've got my ESD safe blower here. And yeah, let's try and get the dust out of this. Okay, let's go for it. Right then. Trying to get out of the dust path. It's quite breezy today. That's a lot of dust. Wow, that's crazy. I just want to show you how much dust comes out of this machine. Watch this. Are you ready? Really happy that it's breezy today because it's carrying the dust away, which is good. It's funny because as I'm blowing the dust out, it's actually resettling and running back inside. So let me try and give it another blow. So I think that'll do. It's looking pretty good now. I got most of the dust out. I've tried blowing it a bit more off camera, and there doesn't seem to be any more dust coming off. So let's take this inside, and I think I'll take this opportunity, because the weather's good, to give the other machine a bit of a dusting as well. I won't show that to you. It's not that interesting, is it? Oh, God, it's so heavy, this machine. Right, that's got that a bit cleaner. It's amazing the difference that's made. There's still a light layer of dust on it, to be honest. So yeah, it'll probably need to be wiped down with a damp cloth to get it completely clean. I've got a monitor here. Let me try and get this in position so you can see it. So the problem with this machine is it doesn't quite work. There are signs of life, so that's good. Let me just plug this in. Let me just move this out of the way for a second. Right then, I think we're ready to go. Let's turn on the monitor. And it's on DVI. So at the front here, I'm just going to press the button. And I've just got a microphone here so you can hear the noise. Definitely sounds. Yeah, that's pretty loud, isn't it? Okay. And yeah, nothing. That's the problem. Now, this card isn't one of the more expensive cards. I think it's a cheaper one. I'm not even sure if it actually works with it, but I do have actually here a very high-end card. So what I'm going to do is swap this in. But before we do that, let me turn this off. Go. And I'm going to swap over the cable to the other port on the graphics card, because it actually has two. It's a DVI graphics card and it has two ports. So let's try the other port and turn it on again. Should hear the bong. Yeah. And again, the monitor hasn't activated. So it does look like either there's a problem with the graphics subsystem in this machine, fingers crossed it's not that, or more likely the graphics card has got a fault. Hard to tell, obviously. So let's turn it off again. There we are. And what we're going to do is we're going to take out the graphics card. There are a couple of thumb screws here in this area. I believe both of those have to come off. Bottom one is okay, it's finger tight. The top one is not. So let me just get some pliers. Here we go. Fingers crossed this doesn't give me too much trouble. Okay, and yeah, there we are. It's broken the tension. There we are. And apart from that, doesn't seem to be anything holding these in. So hopefully, is there a plastic clip here on the PCI? There we go. What is this? PCB made in China. Pretty hard to tell what this is, to be honest. There's nothing on it which is particularly identifying. Okay. We'll just put this here for a second. And this is the card that's going to replace it. This was not top of the range, but near the top. And I think to get this in, I'm going to have to put the machine on its back. Okay. So the tricky thing about this is there are two power cables, and I'll show you this. And they're actually quite difficult to get to. And I need to plug in these cables into both of them. I'm really hoping they're keyed. So anyway, let's give it a go. Rest this up here.
A few minutes later.
There we are, they're both in. Okay, now I've got to try and somehow wrangle this card around into its slot. There it is. And it really does sit in there very, very oddly. Okay, so let's put this back on its feet. And let's see if the graphics card works. I've never actually used it. Just making sure that that's plugged in. That's plugged in. Okay, let's give it a go. And, great. Oh my God, I was worried then. That took way too long. Right then, mouse. Okay, great. So this machine is actually alive. So what have I done there? Well, I've tested two things. Number one, the graphics card seems to be okay. I'm hoping it's going to boot. It may not do, you never know. And also, the graphics subsystem does seem to be okay. I was really worried there for a second that it actually died and there was a major problem with the machine. But it does look like the graphics subsystem is okay. Okay, let's put the keyboard here, my little keyboard. Okay, says it can't be identified. Continue. Brian Crocker, whoever you are, I have your machine. And I'm not sure I'm going to be able to log into this. Looks like it has been wiped. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so that's a bit frustrating. Can we get in as a guest? I guess not. So it looks like this machine is going to require a new installation of the OS to actually find out anything more about it. That was interesting. I was hoping that, like the other machine, there would be a guest account and I'd actually be able to get in there and have a look, but doesn't look like there is. Okay, well anyway, yeah, we'll have to think of something. Like I said, maybe we install a new OS on the machine. That's a little bit of a pain because I'll have to get a suitable OS. I'm not sure which machine this is, exact spec. So it's going to make it more difficult to work out exactly which OS I should go for. Anyway, I think what I'll do is, let's shut this down. I'm going to put this bracket back in because I'm happy with the graphics card. And I just want to make sure it doesn't pop out because it doesn't actually come with any screws. Without this bracket, it's actually just going to probably fall out of the case. Obviously, it's in pretty stable position there, but you know, if it was to be tilted onto its side. So yeah, let me just put this back in. Okay, that's good. That's back in. Let's unplug it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the spec of the other machine. So let's put this out of the way over here for a second. Definitely having a workout today, lifting these heavy machines. Right then, exactly the same interior. So there's not that much point in taking the side of the case off, not right now anyway. Let's just plug it in and have a look at the specs on this machine. What I'm interested to see, because I know the specs on this, is what are the specs on that machine. But obviously because the OS doesn't have a guest account, I can't really log in and have a look at that. So yeah, we'll have to have a think about that. Actually, I will take the side off just to let you have a look at the graphics card in this one. Yeah. So this one has the smaller sibling, as it were, of the card that we just put in the other machine there. So this is I think it's about half the power of that one. I'll put the specs for this card on the screen, and then I'll put the specs for the other card on the screen so you can see what these two cards can do. They're both probably pretty capable, to be honest. Right then, I think we're ready to go. Monitor's still on. Let's turn it on. It's got a very loud bong on these machines. By bong, I mean the noise that the Macs make. Fan is spinning here. There's a bit of a flaw in this design because the fan is right up against here. So I'm not sure how good the airflow is in these cards. I'm not sure if the air can go through here. But yeah, that's a little bit worrying. However, the airflow in this area is really nice. The fans are pushing air through in this area. Okay, so I think this is password. Whoever sold this machine actually set it up to be used by somebody else, which is great. Thanks for that. And if we go up here, we have a look about this Mac. You'll see that it's a 3 gigahertz dual core Intel Xeon. So it's a quad core machine. It's got 4 cores. It's got 7 gigabytes of 66 megahertz DDR2. Let's have some more information. So it says here that it is, as we just said, 3 gigahertz dual core Intel Xeons, 7 gigabytes of RAM. It's got an ATI Radeon HD 5770 with 1 gig of RAM in it. And the software is macOS Lion 10.75. So if we go to displays, tells you that it's got my Dell monitor. Storage, let's have a look. So it's got a super drive, and that's about it. Tells you about the storage on it. Memory, yeah, tells you that you've got, okay, that's interesting. It's got a memory map, which is really cool. So it's got 2 gigabytes, looks like in the top. And then it's got 2 1 gigabyte sticks in the bottom, and then 2 512 megabyte sticks. So I would say one thing you could do with this machine is definitely upgrade the RAM. It's got so much potential, and these sticks are actually quite small, actually. I would imagine these days you can buy those sticks for quite a low price. So that's something we could definitely do with this machine. So while we've been talking, something that's occurred to me is, and actually, you'll notice that in this machine, all of the drive bays are missing apart from the main one, the boot drive. What about if we pulled out the boot drive from this machine and we plugged it into the other machine? That might get into an account, this account, which I can then have a look at the hardware specs. Yeah, that would be quite interesting, I think. So does this actually show you the model of the machine? Yeah, here we go. So it says that is got a bus speed of 1.3 gigahertz, 3 gigahertz, dual core Intel Xeons, and it is a Mac Pro 2.1. Okay, so that's what I was looking for, the 2.1. So this particular range of Mac Pros, they all have the same number of machine. I think it's an A1186. But within that range, which lasted for quite a few years, about 6 years, there are different steps, different models. The first one I think is the 1.1. This shows that this is the second iteration of this machine, the 2.1. And the thing is right now, I'm really not sure what the other machine is. So I think that's what we want to concentrate on. We want to try and get that so it actually boots up and it gives us this information. So I've got a video of this. I know basically what this is. So what I think we'll do now is we'll power it down. We'll try and take that drive out. I don't know quite how you do it. I think you just pull it, to be honest. And then what we'll try and do is we'll do the same thing with the other machine. Put this drive in that machine and try and boot it up. And hopefully it will boot. But I'm not sure if it's going to work, obviously. But let's give that a go. So a little bit of time has passed. I had to do a little bit of research, and this may seem obvious to anybody out there who's got one of these machines, but believe me, it's not if you've never used one before. I was trying to pull out the hard drive, and I'll tell you what, it's really stuck in very solidly. And I noticed these little sort of slidey things here with orange showing there. And I thought, well, maybe these slide or something like that. Did a quick check on the internet. Most people weren't actually mentioning it. But then I noticed there was this thing here. And it looks like this is some kind of latching mechanism. And then, of course, the penny dropped that there is a mechanism on this machine that if you have the side of the machine closed, these drive bays are locked in position, which makes sense. You've closed the machine, you don't want the drives falling out or anything like that, so it locks it in place. So to actually get the hard drive out, we have to open the side of the machine, so we just pull that lever on the back. When I'm working on the machine, I like to push that back in just in case it gets knocked. It's a bit precarious with it sticking out like that. It could get bent or something, so yeah, I'm doing the right thing, I think, by putting that in, but I could have actually damaged it, you know, when I'm fiddling around. But yeah, to get the drives out, it actually must be open. So with that done, hopefully, let's give this a bit of force. There we go. It's not too bad. Okay, so there we are. That's the hard drive out. Right then, let's unplug it, get the other machine in. Let's close that. As I said, I don't want that to get damaged. So unplug the keyboard and the mouse. Let's get the other machine in. I mean, they really do look identical. The only difference you can see is the much bigger graphics card in this one. Let's get it all plugged back in again. Okay, it's ready to rock, but of course it's got this original hard drive in it. So again, we need to unlock the case. Move the original hard drive, put that here. We'll try and put the other one in from the other machine. It should hopefully just slide in, fingers crossed. It does. Now, I know from watching other videos that these drive caddies are kind of individual to the different machines. So that suggests that they are the same model or very similar models. Anyway, the best way to find out is if we try booting it. So let's give that a go. Turn on the monitor. Is the monitor on? Yes, it is. Okay. And let's turn it on. Fingers crossed it boots. Let's see. Obviously, while it's booting, there may be a difference between the hardware and what the OS actually says it has installed. So that may mean that it may do some reconfiguration. So let's hope that that actually works. Great. Yeah, there was a massively long delay there whilst it reconfigured itself, but it looks like it made it through the pain. So hopefully we can log in. Yeah, looking good. Okay, let's have a look at the system report again. I may have a bit of a thrash again while it works things out. Okay, so it is a slightly slower machine. 2.6 gigahertz dual core Intel Xeons, memory 2 gigabytes, so a lot less memory actually. And it says it's DDR2 F8 DIMMs, so actually it looks like it might be, I've got a feeling this is the same machine, you know. Okay, let's have a look, more info. Graphics card, yeah, this is the bigger one, ATI Radeon HD 5870, 1 gig of RAM. Basically, this is about twice the speed as the card in the other machine. So it looks like the other machine has the faster processors. The other machine has more memory, and this definitely obviously has less memory, only 2 gigabytes in this one. What's interesting though is there actually does seem to be quite a lot of sticks, so I guess they're 512 megabyte sticks, which is pretty tiny really for this machine. Let's have a look at a system report. And it says here that it is a Mac Pro 1.1. Ah, okay, so it is a different generation. So this is the earlier model. This is the first model from, I guess, 2006, possibly. That's interesting. So, why was I so interested in the spec of these two machines? Well, I'll tell you what it is. I didn't know which one of these I wanted to keep, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with these machines. If you think about the history of these machines, the one that matters the most is the earliest one, I would say. You know, that introduced the range. And that's the one which people fell in love with, and it went on to create a dynasty, a short dynasty, but a 6-year dynasty of machines that people loved. The ones from 2012 in particular, people really loved because that was a very powerful machine. And even until recent times, people were still seeking those out. I'm assuming now that maybe the hot glow of nostalgia is worn off on those a little bit because current machines are very powerful and maybe that machine isn't as useful anymore, but still, it's a very well-loved machine. But this looks like it may not be one of the original ones, you know, from literally the first model that came out in 2006, but it is a significant machine. It is actually one of the earlier Mac Pros, which is really cool. I could, I suppose now, think about getting myself the third one, the 3.1, and getting the end of the dynasty, and then I'd have the complete set of these. Not sure I really want to do that. I'm not sure I've got room in the cabin to have 3 of these machines, but yeah, it's a possibility. Now, in terms of what I want to do with these machines, I think it'll be quite interesting to actually use this as possibly a gaming machine, which would be heresy, obviously, to people who used these machines back in the day. These machines were very high-end machines. They were workstations for doing, you know, video editing and things like that. If it had actually been used in the visual effects industry, it could have been a very capable 3D workstation as well. Maybe not with this card in it, but maybe with an NVIDIA card, the top of the range. This would have been a really good 3D workstation as well. But it's from 2006. I used to have a machine back then, you know, a PC, but unfortunately that's gone with the wind many years ago. What I could do is I could turn this into my 2006 era, going back to maybe 2003 gaming machine, or rather not this one, but the machine which is currently on the floor there, the 2.1. It's a slightly more powerful machine. The Xeons in it are faster. I'm assuming that it's a more capable machine. So yeah, maybe what I could do is try and beef that up a little bit and make that into my gaming machine. I'm not sure if 8 GB of RAM is enough. I think it would be. I mean, I don't think we had that much RAM back in those days. I think 8 was a decent amount, to be honest. The graphics card, this graphics card is probably reasonable. I don't know, I'd have to try it out. But the key thing is, this machine should be dual bootable as far as I'm aware. But what I need to do obviously is wipe this hard drive because it's got personal data on it, which I really don't need to have. I would like to get rid of that data, obviously. This is a 250 gigabyte drive. This one here is a 750. So obviously this is a much bigger drive. This needs to go back in the other machine. This graphics card will go in the other machine as well. And I will put this graphics card, the other graphics card back in here, and that will actually make this machine less powerful, which isn't such a bad thing because it's from a slightly earlier period, just a little bit. So I think that might be a good thing to do. So anyway, I think that's enough for this video. I think we've covered quite a bit here and we found out now what my two machines are. I think what I need to do in the next video is obviously overwrite that OS there, put a new OS on it so I get rid of that data, potentially look into what the latest OS is I can put onto the other hard drive, the hard drive here. I need to get this to be dual boot and then to get a period correct version of Windows onto this machine, whatever that would be. Possibly, yeah, I think with a dual boot Mac, you can't have more than 2 OSs. I'll have to do a little bit of research into that, but maybe you can have 3, I don't know. That would be quite cool, wouldn't it, if I could boot into a few different ones. So yeah, I think the other machine, the machine which is currently on the floor, is going to be kept, and I'm going to use it as a gaming machine for that era of games because there are many games from that era I really love and would like to go back and play. So yeah, I think that's the plan. So I hope you found that interesting. I certainly did. And yeah, it's interesting. This machine, as I said, came from a video editing studio, and I'm assuming that I had a pretty busy life there. And then it was retired, and I think a number of these were handing over to a young man, and I bought one of them off him a couple of years ago over near Croydon, as I said. When I got this home, I remember I checked it out, and I didn't make a note of the spec at the time, but it was actually working, the graphics card at that time. And it looks like in the last couple of years, for some reason, the graphics card, this one here, has perished. I'll show that to the camera. I'm not sure if anybody out there who's a Mac enthusiast can tell me which particular card this is. I've taken a look at it and it doesn't seem to have any particular markings on it, which is quite strange. It does have 2 DVI outs on the back, which suggests that it's a reasonably high-end card. It's got a pretty massive heatsink as well. And I don't think there's any damage on it. It just doesn't seem to work anymore, which is quite strange. But you know, these things happen, I suppose. I've had a look at the caps and they look okay. Doesn't look like it's leaking or anything like that. So yeah, be interesting to find out what this is, and maybe I can get this repaired in the future. This machine then is the lowest spec of the two, which is a bit of a surprise, to be honest. And what I didn't do earlier was I didn't actually tell you how I came by this machine. Well, there's a gentleman who lives around the corner from me, and he does house clearances. His name is John. And I met him because I used to walk past his house on the way home from the shops which are near to me. And I used to basically go there pretty much every day, especially in the summer, to get a coffee to start off the day. I was walking past his house one day and he had a gate left open, and I noticed there was a Macintosh left outside. And I walked past the following day and it was still there out in the sun. And I thought that was a bit interesting that the machine was just lying there. So eventually I knocked the door and I had a chat with him, and I found out that he did house clearances and that the machine was just scrap. So what happened was probably about 3 months after I bought this machine, John asked me if I was interested in a Macintosh that he had, and he has no idea about computers whatsoever. So he couldn't describe what it was. So I went round to have a look, And lo and behold, there's another Mac Pro there. Honestly, I didn't really want to buy it because I'd already bought one. I don't really need a collection of these. And I was chatting to him, and I know that pretty much everything that he buys, if he doesn't sell it on, then it will basically go to scrap. And I didn't want this machine to go to scrap. So I made him a pretty lowball offer, to be honest, because I didn't really want it. And I'd spent quite a lot of money at that time on machines. And he accepted, because at the end of the day, the money that I offered him was much more than he would have got. Well, he would have got nothing for it. So yeah, he was happy to sell it on to me, and I was happy to get it at that price. And then it basically went into my loft next to this one, and it stayed there for the next couple of years. Now, since I've had the cabin built, I have a little bit more space to have a look at things like this. So when MARCHintosh came up, I thought it was the perfect opportunity to get these two machines out and have a look at them again and see exactly what they are. It's interesting, I must admit, to find out that this machine is actually the faster of the two, 3 gigahertz, and it's actually the newer of the two. So that's lucky, actually. And as we know, right now, it's got the less powerful of the two graphics cards in it. However, it does work, the graphics card, which is good. And we know now that this machine has the more powerful graphics card, but it has lower end CPUs. Well, not lower end, slightly less powerful, but not exactly weak. As I said, what are we going to do with it? Well, this machine, I think, will be just kept for a while, and I'll have a think about what I'm going to do with this. But this machine, I think, definitely could find a place in the cabin as an active machine. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean one where I'm going to try and get it set up with a monitor so I can use it at any time. Right now, the cabin is still a little bit of a mess, and the reason for that is that I don't have quite enough storage space in here, and money's a little bit tight at the moment because the expense of building the cabin and everything else, you know, having the electrics fitted, etc., cost a lot of money, and I'm still paying that off. So I can't really go out at the moment and splash a lot of cash on extra bits and bobs. But I actually am in the process at the moment of making some more shelves. I've put some more shelves above my desk area there where I actually work. I've put some another shelf above it. So that should give me about another 8 feet, something like that, maybe more, of extra shelving, which is good. And then on this wall, I've added 2 more shelves, and that's going to give me another 6 feet of shelving. And what I need to do is obviously put some storage boxes up there, and then I can get rid of some of the stuff that I have currently under the desks and try and store them in a slightly more long-term manner. Once I've done that, I think I will come back to this machine and work on it again. I've joined a Facebook group, which is about actually upgrading these machines. If you know anything about these machines and you would like to chip in, please make a comment about it, because I'd definitely like to hear what you think about these machines, or what do you think I should do with them. And yeah, I'm really looking forward actually to getting this, I was going to say souped up, but it doesn't need much souping up, does it? It was already a pretty massively powerful computer when it was designed. Basically tweaked a little bit to be my 2006 era, and like I said, a little bit earlier than that machine. Effectively, it'll be a machine that can play games from, let's say, I don't know, 2000, maybe 2003 to 2006, 8, something like that, and it'll probably play them perfectly well. This graphics card here, the more powerful one, will go in here. I think I might replace the hard drive that we have there with a SATA SSD. That will make it quieter, obviously. And I think possibly I might upgrade the hard drive as well. It's a 750 gig hard drive, which may be enough, to be honest. But if I'm going to put games on it, then I might need a little bit more space than that. So yeah, maybe I might upgrade the hard drive. Actually, I've got plenty of space, haven't I? It's got 4 drive bays in there. Yeah, so yeah, it's going to be really exciting coming back to this machine and upgrading it in the future. Anyway, this video has gone on long enough, and I hope you did enjoy it. And if you did, then please click on the like button. And if you haven't been to my channel before and you'd like to see more videos like this, then please click on subscribe, and make sure you hit the bell as well, because I mean, subscribing is okay, but if you don't hit the bell, you won't get notified about new videos that I produce. And I think that would be a shame, because if you enjoyed this, then hopefully you enjoy those as well. Anyway, until then, have a good day, and hope to see you then. Take care.